Welcome to Starbound's second channel. My name is Veronica and I'll be your narrator today. But before we get into today's story, please check below to see if you've subscribed to our channel. It's 100% free and just allows our stories to pop up on your feed more often. Chief of Security Irizur observed the captured human, barely suppressing the laughter that welled up at the creature's absurdly small stature. What had this human been thinking, ordering his ship to land on Kririar without permission? Now he was being taken to an audience with the ancient Kririar protector, a monstrous relic of a primordial species that had become their guardian after setting on Kririar a millennium ago. Irizur had no idea what would unfold when the two came face to face, but he suspected it would go like always, with the intruder being eaten alive in a single bite by the powerful protector. The procession through the Imperial Palace corridors must have looked comical to any observer. 4 towering Kririar guards, each standing nearly 10 feet tall, marched with weapons drawn around a single diminutive figure. The human barely reached the height of their waists, making the excessive security appear almost absurd. Many of the palace staff paused their duties to stare and snicker behind ornate fans or data tablets. Some even took detours from their assigned paths just to catch a glimpse of the strange spectacle. Irizur's impressive frame commanded respect wherever he went. His broad shoulders supported a muscular torso encased in ceremonial armor. The bright metal plates, etched with the symbols of his rank and heritage, reflected fragments of light that danced across the corridor walls as he moved. Beneath the armor, his deep green skin, a sign of pure Kririar lineage, was too warm thanks to the heavy armor. His face, stern and angular, featured prominent cheekbones and a strong jutting jaw. Each of Irizur's 4 guards matched his imposing stature, their own armor slightly less ornate but no less intimidating. They moved with the synchronized movements that came from years of training together, their fingers resting on plasma rifles that could be drawn and fired at the smallest sign of trouble. By contrast, the human looked almost pitifully weak. Its pale, pinkish skin appeared soft and vulnerable, lacking the natural armor of Kririar scales. The creature's limbs were spindly by Kririar standards, though oddly proportioned. Its head seemed too large for its body, with strange patches of brownish fibers sprouting from the top and parts of its face. The human's features, a small nose, thin lips, and rounded ears, struck Irizur as childlike and underdeveloped. Most Kririar would mistake the human for a deformed child of their own species, if not for the distinctive lack of ridges and the bizarre coloration. "Chief Irizur," came a familiar voice from around the corner. Krizur, his second in command, approached with a datapad in hand. Krizur's armor gleamed almost as brightly as Izur's own, though the markings denoted his slightly lower rank. "Is that the intruder? By the Protector's claws, I thought you were exaggerating about its size." "Who, sir?" One of the escort guards couldn't contain himself. "Perhaps we should have brought a carrying case instead of restraints. It might scurry away like one of those rodents in the lower levels." "Careful," added Zinur, another guard, his mandibles clicking in amusement. "If you step too heavily, you might squash it by accident. Then who would the Protector get to snack on?" The guards erupted in laughter, their deep voices echoing through the ornate corridors. Even Krizur joined in, slapping his armored thigh with enough force to create a resounding clang. Irizur felt his own face muscles contracting with suppressed mirth. The comments were undeniably funny, but as chief of security, he needed to maintain at least a veneer of professionalism. Still, he couldn't help the slight quirk at the corner of his mouth as he observed the human's reaction, or rather, the lack of it. Curiously, the small creature showed no sign of anger or fear at being the subject of their mockery. Its expression remained frustratingly unreadable to Irizur. Where the other captives might have cowered or raged, this human maintained an almost serene demeanor. If anything, There seemed to be a hint of amusement in those small, rounded eyes. This lack of appropriate terror before meeting the Protector unsettled Irizar more than he cared to admit. "Enough," Irizar finally commanded, though without much conviction. "We approach the inner sanctum. Show some dignity before the Protector's servants." The corridor widened as they approached an imposing doorway that towered nearly 20 feet high. The entryway was carved from a single piece of Kririan heartwood, a material so dense and heavy that it required ancient gravity manipulation technology to position. Intricate carvings depicting the arrival of the Protector covered its surface, showing the great beast descending from the stars to save the Kririer from the long-forgotten calamity. For the Kririer, the door was appropriately grand. For the human, it must have seemed absurdly, almost comically oversized. Irizar noted with satisfaction how tiny the creature appeared before the majestic entryway. Flanking the massive door stood 2 guards unlike any others in the palace. Their armor was black rather than standard silver, and bore no rank insignia or family markings. These were the Protector's personal servants, bound by ancient oaths that predated the current imperial dynasty. They acknowledged no authority save that of the Protector itself. "Halt!" commanded the left guard, his voice devoid of the warmth or humor that had filled the corridor moments before. "State your purpose." Irizar stepped forward, assuming the formal stance of official presentation. "Chief of Security Irizar, presenting a human trespasser for the Protector's judgment, as commanded by Her Imperial Radiance." The guard's gaze shifted to the small human, then back to Irizar's entourage. "The Protector will see only you and the trespasser. The others are not permitted entry." Irizar frowned. "That is unusual. In previous cases—" "The Protector's will is not subject to precedent," interrupted the guard, his tone leaving no room for discussion. "Only you and the human may pass." Zinir stepped forward. "Sir, our job required that the prisoner should have at least 2 guards at all times." The black-armored guard didn't even look at Zinir as he replied. "The Protector's chamber is the most secure location on Kririar. Additional guards would be redundant." Irizar tried once more. "These men have served faithfully. They deserve to witness. The Protector's will is absolute." The guard stated with finality. "Enter now or return to the Empress with your mission unfulfilled." A heavy silence fell over the group. In all previous instances when trespassers were brought before the Protector, Irizar's entire detail had been allowed to witness the judgment, usually a swift and gruesome affair that served as both entertainment and a powerful reminder of the consequences of failing in their protective duties. "Wait here," Irizar finally commanded his subordinates. "Be prepared for our return." Husar looked disappointed. "But sir, we always get to—" "Silence!" Irizar snapped. "Follow your orders." The massive door swung open with surprising silence, its perfect balance belying its enormous weight. Irizar gestured curtly for the human to precede him, half expecting the creature to make a desperate break for freedom. Instead, it walked calmly through the doorway, its gait relaxed and confident, as though entering the chamber by invitation rather than coercion. As soon as they crossed the threshold, the door closed behind them with a deep, resonant thud that seemed to mark a boundary between worlds. The opulent corridors of the Imperial Palace gave way to a stark passageway illuminated by strips of cold light embedded in the floor. "Just the 2 of us now," the human observed, its voice higher pitched than a Krierar's, but surprisingly steady. Irizar couldn't contain his derision any longer. A barking laugh escaped him, echoing down the metallic corridor. "If you're contemplating some desperate escape attempt, tiny one, I suggest you abandon such thoughts immediately. One strike from my hand would crush your fragile skull. The Protector would find little entertainment in consuming the remains." To Irizar's surprise, the human's response was a light chuckle. "I'm Christopher," it said, extending one of its small, five-fingered hands in what must have been some human gesture. "I'm actually quite excited to meet you, Protector." Erizur ignored the extended hand, his amusement quickly transforming into unsettled anger. "This is not some tourist attraction, human. You entered Kriorar's space without authorization, ignored multiple warnings, and landed without clearance. Do you understand the seriousness of these violations?" "I understand your perspective," Christopher replied, lowering his hand but maintaining that infuriating calm. "My perspective?" Erizur said, leaning down until his face was level with the human's. "Let me explain reality to you. Best case scenario, the Protector devours you quickly. Worst case, you are imprisoned for years while we extract every piece of information about human defenses and weaknesses, after which you will be devoured, though much more slowly." The human shrugged. "I don't think that's going to happen." Erizur straightened, momentarily speechless. "And why exactly do you believe that?" "Let's just say I have a good feeling about this meeting." "A good feeling?" Erizur repeated incredulously. "Did your research not include the fate of the last 17 trespassers brought here before the Protector?" Christopher merely smiled. Every situation is unique. Erizur spent the next several minutes attempting to extract some explanation for the human's baffling confidence, alternating between threats, logical appeals, and even offers of leniency if the creature would reveal any hidden agenda. Throughout it all, Christopher maintained his maddening composure, offering nothing beyond vague assurances that things would work out for him. Eventually, Erizur gave up, leading the way in frustrated silence through the passage that connected the palace to the Protector's domain. The section was relatively new, at least by the standards of Krior architecture. Erizur remembered visiting the construction site as a child, watching in awe as engineers and workers carved through the living mountain to create this link between the Imperial Palace and the ancient chamber where the Protector had made its home. The passage had been designed to allow the Empress and select dignitaries to seek the Protector's wisdom without the beast needing to leave its preferred habitat. The air grew increasingly humid as they progressed, carrying strange, musky odors that triggered primitive warning signals to Erizur's brain. No matter how many times he had traveled this path, his body always recognized, on some instinctual level, that he was approaching the domain of an apex predator. After nearly 20 minutes of walking, they reached the final security checkpoint. A seemingly simple door of dull gray metal, unadorned except for a small control panel. Unlike the grand entrance of the palace end, this barrier was entirely functional, designed to secure rather than impress. "Identification," came a synthetic voice from a hidden speaker. Erizur stepped forward, placing his palm against the scanner. A beam of light passed over his hand, analyzing both his DNA and the subdermal security implant that identified him as Chief of Security. Voice confirmation required. The system prompted, "Chief of Security Erizur, escorting prisoner for the Protector's judgment." A series of clicks and whirls indicated the disengaging of multiple lock mechanisms. The door slid open silently, revealing absolute darkness beyond. "Stay close," Erizur instructed the human. "The chamber is designed to the Protector's preferences, not ours." They stepped through the doorway, and immediately the air quality changed dramatically. The sterile, filtered atmosphere of the corridor gave way to something primal, warm, moist, and heavy with organic scents. The darkness was near complete, with only a few dim red lights providing minimal illumination around the perimeter of what Erizur knew to be an enormous cavern. As his eyes adjusted, the vastness of the space became apparent. The chamber was natural in origin, a massive deep cave within the mountain that had been only minimally modified to serve as a Protector's dwelling. Stalactites hung from the distant ceiling like massive fangs, some reaching 30 or 40 feet in length. The floor was uneven, with various levels and natural platforms forming a complex topography. The smell was overwhelming, a pungent mixture of animal musk, minerals from the living rock, and something else, something alien and ancient that defied categorization. It was a scent of a predator's den, a place where death had occurred countless times over millennium. Irizar's eyes strained to locate the chamber's occupant, though he knew better than to call out. The protector did not appreciate being summoned like a common servant. After several tense moments, he detected movement on a raised natural platform about 50 yards away, a deeper shadow within the shadows shifting slightly. He approached cautiously, following the narrow path that wound through the uneven floor of the cavern. To his surprise, the human kept pace easily, despite the challenging terrain and near darkness. As they drew closer, the shape resolved into the enormous form of the protector, apparently sleeping. Even in repose, the creature inspired primal terror. It was roughly mammalian in form, though clearly no species native to Kririar. Its body, covered in thick black fur, was at least 30 feet long from its blunt snout to the base of its powerful tail. Massive limbs, each ending in paws larger than an Irizar's torso, were tucked beneath its bulk. In the dim red light, Irizar could make out the gentle rise and fall of its ribcage as it breathed, each breath moving more air than a Kririar transport vessel's ventilation system. Irizar stopped at a respectful distance and bowed deeply, holding the position as protocol demanded. The human remained standing upright beside him, either ignorant of or deliberately ignoring the proper etiquette. "Majestic One," Irizar began, "I humbly beg forgiveness for disturbing your rest." The massive form stirred. Two enormous eyes opened, glowing red orbs that seemed to emit deadly light. They fixed immediately on the visitors, revealing an intelligence that was both ancient and alien. "Chief of Security Irizar, presenting himself as commanded," he continued, maintaining his bow. "Her Imperial Radiance sends her deepest respects and gratitude for your continued protection of our world." The beast shifted its position slightly, now fully alert though still reclining. It made no sound. "I have brought before you a human who has violated our sovereign space," Irizar explained, finally straightening from his bow. "The creature landed on Kririar without authorization, ignoring all warnings and protocols. The Empress hopes you will deliver judgment for his transgression, as is your right and tradition." The enormous head tilted slightly, those burning eyes studying first Irizar, then the human. After what seemed like an eternity, a rumbling voice emerged from the beast, so deep that Irizar felt it in its bones more than heard it with its ears. "Is that so?" Just 3 words, yet they contained multitudes, ancient power, casual authority, and something else Irizar couldn't quite identify. Was it amusement? "Yes, Majestic One," Irizar confirmed, gesturing toward the human and repeating what he had already said. "The trespasser was apprehended immediately upon landing. As per protocol, we have brought it directly to you for judgment." The protector's gaze remained fixed on the human, who stared back with a casualness that bordered on insolence. The tension in the air as the two regarded each other in silence. Growing uncomfortable with the human's lack of appropriate deference, Irizar moved behind the small creature and placed a heavy hand on its shoulder, forcing it to kneel. To his surprise, the human's body offered more resistance than expected. Though the creature appeared fragile, its frame felt dense and solid, as though composed of materials far heavier than mere flesh. More disconcerting was a distinct impression that the human had allowed itself to be forced down, rather than being truly compelled by Irizar's strength. The realization sent a surge of anger through the security chief. "Address the protector with whatever respect your tiny brain can muster," he hissed into the human's ear. "You will be given one opportunity to explain your trespass before judgment is passed." The human ignored him completely. Instead, after another moment of intense eye contact with the protector, Christopher's face broke into a broad grin. "You nasty black furball!" the human exclaimed in a tone of familiar affection. "You really let yourself go, didn't you? How long since you took a shower? And what the hell is this place?" He gestured around the cavern with undisguised dismay. "Did you by any chance suffer an accident and get reset to factory settings? Because I remember you had improved a lot in abandoning your animalistic tendencies." Irizar froze in absolute horror. In 1,000 years of recorded interactions with the Protector, no one had ever dared to speak to the ancient being with anything less than abject reverence. The punishment for such disrespect would surely be spectacular and immediate. Irizar automatically took 2 steps back, distancing himself from what was about to become a gruesome demonstration of the natural order. The Protector rose to its full height, nearly 15 feet at the shoulder, and moved with a shocking speed for a creature of its size. Its enormous head lowered toward the kneeling human, jaws that could swallow a queer child whole, opening slightly to reveal teeth the length of daggers. Irizar held his breath, anticipating the spray of blood and viscera that would paint the cavern floor the next instant. His hand moved instinctively to shield his eyes. "Brother," rumbled the Protector, its massive snout gently nudging the human's chest. "The last couple of centuries have been rough." Irizar's mind went blank with shock. "Brother? Brother?" The enormous beast delicately lifted the human with its snout, allowing Christopher to climb to his feet. "This is why I contacted you," the Protector continued, its voice softer now, almost vulnerable despite its earth-shaking bass. "I am ashamed of what I've become, but I trusted you would not judge me too harshly." Christopher laughed, apparently entirely comfortable in the presence of a creature that could devour him with less effort than Irizar would expend swatting an insect. "Everyone misses you, you big furball," he said, seeming to completely forget Irizar's presence. "And what you need isn't not being judged. You need to be bullied back into shape." He gestured around the dim, musty cavern. "Jokes about your bad smell and the sorry state of this place you call home are just a beginning." The beast made a sound that Irizar eventually recognized, with dawning disbelief, as a chuckle. "You humans never change," it said, something like fondness in its terrible voice. Irizar's mind raced to process what he was witnessing. The Protector, ancient guardian of Krior, the semi-divine being that had guided their civilization for a millennium, was conversing with this tiny human as though they were old friends? "What exactly is happening here?" Irizar finally demanded, his voice emerging higher-pitched than intended. "Majestic One, what relationship do you have with this creature?" The Protector's burning gaze swiveled toward him, and Irizar immediately regretted speaking. The ancient being's face contorted into an expression of irritation. "I have no time for explanation now that my brother has come to visit," it growled. "Your presence is tolerated only because I was sleeping and forgot to order you to stay outside." "But the unauthorized landing," Irizar pressed, knowing he was overstepping but unable to restrain his confusion. "The violations of our sovereign space." The Protector ignored him completely, returning its attention to Christopher. "How long can you stay this time?" "As long as you need," the human replied. "The others are handling things back in the ship." "Others?" Irizar interjected. "What others? Are more humans coming? This would constitute an invasion. You mentioned centuries." Irizar continued, addressing the human directly since the Protector seemed disinclined to answer. "How is that possible? Human lifespans are—" "Nanotech and exercise," Christopher replied with a dismissive wave. The typical regimen: 100 push-ups, 100 sit-ups, 100 squats, and 10-kilometer run every day. That's absurd! Irizar sputtered. No exercise regimen extends the lifespan by centuries? Christopher shrugged. We stole some alien tech a long time ago. Basically immortal now. Deal with it if it sounds unbelievable. I don't care. It did sound unbelievable. All of it. Irizar felt as though he had stepped into some bizarre alternate reality where everything he knew about the cosmic order had been inverted. Remember that time on the Irvin planet? The human was saying to the Protector, their conversation flowing as though Irizar wasn't even present, when those silicone-based life forms thought you were some kind of god. The Protector made a rumbling chuckle again. They built a temple. Wanted me to sit on a mountain all day while they brought offerings. Not too different from your current arrangement, Christopher observed, gesturing around to the cavern. What's with this Protector business anyway? Since when do you play guardian to an entire civilization? The massive creature had the grace to look slightly embarrassed, its ears flattening against its skull. I was just minding my own business in this cave. They started bringing me food, asking for advice, built a whole religion around it. It shifted uncomfortably. Wasn't my idea. Irizar felt physically ill. The foundation of Kririar society, the divine protection and guidance that had elevated them above all other species in their sector of the galaxy, was being described as a cosmic accident? A misunderstanding? It's their fault you've let yourself go, the human was saying, poking a finger accusingly at the Protector's enormous belly. Locked in the dark cave, not even hunting for yourself. Psh, it's no good for anyone, especially not for someone with your energy needs. The casual way the tiny human criticized the godlike being that had held Irizar's people in terrified reverence for millennium was too much. Something in the security chief snapped. Enough! He roared, his voice echoing through the cavern. I demand to know what is happening. What is the nature of your relationship? How do you know each other? What is the meaning of this mockery of everything we hold sacred? The outburst lingered. For a moment, Irizar feared he had signed his own death warrant. But then Christopher laughed. It's no big secret, the human said with a shrug. My friends and I rescued a little black furball on a forgotten moon a long time ago. Eventually, the cute little pet grew into a big, scary pet. He grinned up at the enormous beast. Still soft on the inside, though, aren't you? The Protector growled, but there was no real menace to it. I was never a pet, it objected. I only allowed you to ride me because humans have such pitiful little legs. You couldn't run for your lives when things got ugly. Irizar's mind conjured the unthinkable image of humans, tiny, fragile humans, perched atop the Protector's back as it bounded across some alien landscape. The sacred beast that had been the object of worship and terror for 1,000 years, reduced to a beast of burden? Ride? He croaked. You let them ride you? Like a common animal? The enormous creature sighed, releasing a gust of warm air that ruffled Irizar's ceremonial armor. I carried them on my back, it clarified, with the tone of someone who had made this distinction many times before. Don't say I let them ride me with so much emphasis. The distinction is important around humans. They tend to take words the wrong way and make fun of me later. It cast a pointed look at Christopher. They also have tendencies to get romantic with everything that moves and assume everyone else is like them when it comes to the riding business. Irizar's mind reeled, struggling to process the implications of the beast's statement. Before he could formulate any response, Christopher interjected. Oh, you're in no position to claim the moral high ground, the small creature said with blatant amusement. If I remember correctly, the whole reason you disappeared was because of the enormous draconic female that broke your heart. And if memory doesn't betray me, she wasn't exactly a member of your species. The effect of those words on the Protector was immediate and profound. The massive beast's posture sagged, and one of its glowing red eyes released what could only be described as a tear, a single droplet that carved a glistening path through the fur of its face before falling to the stone floor with an audible splash. "Must you bring up Drachna?" the Protector rumbled, its voice heavy with ancient sorrow. "That is not a name I care to remember." "Oh, come on," Christopher pressed, crossing his arms defiantly. "It's been what, 800 years? 9? Time to move on, buddy. Saying her name won't summon her, you know." The Protector's enormous paws rose with surprising speed, clamping over his ears in a gesture so childishly petulant that it would have been comical if performed by any being less terrifying. "Not listening," the massive beast said. Harazur stood frozen, his mandibles slack with disbelief. The sacred guardian of his entire civilization, the being whose mere mention inspired fear, was covering its ears like a stubborn child refusing to hear unwelcome news? Christopher rolled his eyes dramatically, then turned to Irazur with a conspiratorial wink. Always the same with him. Emotional maturity of a teenager, I swear. Without waiting for a response, the human marched directly toward the Protector, sized up the enormous creature for a moment, then began clambering up its fur-covered foreleg with the ease of someone who had done so countless times before. Irazur watched in mute horror as the tiny human scaled the living deity, using tufts of the Protector's thick black fur as handholds. The beast remained stubbornly motionless, eyes shut tight, paws still clamped over its ears, apparently determined to maintain its childish display of avoidance. When Christopher reached the top of the Protector's massive head, he cupped his hands around his mouth and shouted directly at one of the covered ears. "Drachna never found another mate. She mentioned you just last month." Irazur winced, certain this would finally provoke the deadly response he had been expecting since the human first opened its insolent mouth. Surely even this strange relationship had limits, and the human had just crossed them. To his astonishment, the Protector's paws dropped away from its ears instantly. With a movement so gentle it seemed impossible for a creature of such size, the beast plucked the human from its head and placed him carefully on the ground, then curled its enormous paws around him in a loose circle, effectively trapping the small being. "What did she say?" the Protector demanded, all pretense of disinterest abandoned. "Tell me exactly. When? Where? How did she look?" Christopher made an exaggerated gagging noise and waved his hand in front of his face. "First, could you maybe exhale in a different direction? Centuries in a cave hasn't done your breath any favors." He ducked under one of the massive paws and stepped clear of the encirclement, brushing imaginary dust from his clothing. "And second, give me some space, will you? The whole looming predator thing is so last millennium." The Protector pulled back slightly, its glowing red eyes fixed intently on the human, enormous tail moving from side to side with obvious anticipation. "Well," Christopher began, drawing out the moment with obvious enjoyment. "Turns out, some traders from the Crimson Cluster ran into her about 30 light years from here. Said she'd raided a pirate convoy and made off with their cargo. Couple thousand barrels of some fermented beverage or other." The Protector's ears perked up, standing at full attention. "She always did enjoy a good raid." Christopher agreed. Apparently, after consuming a substantial portion of her spoils, she got nostalgic. Started talking about the one that got away. Described you in rather specific terms that left little doubt to who she was referring to. The change in the Protector's demeanor was immediate and dramatic. The fearsome beast, revered and dreaded across countless star systems, suddenly resembled nothing so much as an oversized puppy. Its tail began to swish back and forth with increasing speed, sweeping across the cavern floor with enough force to dislodge small rocks. She spoke of me? The Protector's voice had lost its rumbling depth, rising almost to a whine. What exactly did she say? Did she seem angry? Sad? Did she mention why she left? Is she well? Has her scale pattern changed? Whoa, slow down, Christopher interrupted, holding up his hands. I'll tell you everything, but first... He looked the enormous creature up and down with exaggerated criticism. We need to talk about your, situation. The Protector looked down at itself, as if suddenly aware of its appearance. What situation? Look at you! Christopher gestured broadly. You're out of shape, you're living in a damp cave, you smell like a swamp creature, and you've apparently spent the last few centuries letting a bunch of primitive aliens worship you as a protector god. Not exactly the dashing interstellar adventurer she fell for, is it? The Protector's ears drooped. I've let myself go, haven't I? Catastrophically. Christopher agreed without mercy. But that's why I'm here. It's time to get you back out there, back to the stars, back to adventure. He poked at the beast's massive belly, back in fighting form. The Protector's entire posture changed. Its shoulders straightened, its chest puffed out, and its tail began whipping back and forth with such enthusiasm that Irizar had to dodge to avoid being swept off its feet. You would do that for me? Take me with you? Hope suffused the ancient being's voice. Back to space? Back to life? That's the plan, Christopher confirmed with a grin. But it's gonna take work. Serious training. A few years minimum before you're ready to face Drachna again. Centuries of sitting in this cave have probably wrecked your social skills, not to mention your combat reflexes. The Protector made a half-hearted noise of protest. My combat reflexes are fine. Really? Christopher raised an eyebrow. When's the last time you had to dodge an Arcturian plasma beam, or smash a small ship with your jaws? These things take practice, pal. The enormous beast pawed at the ground, looking to all the world like an embarrassed adolescent. I suppose you're right, but you promised to help me, and eventually... Yes, Christopher said, patting one of the Protector's massive paws. We'll get you fit, get you socialized, and then, if you're ready, we'll track down your scaly girlfriend. She's not my girlfriend. The Protector mumbled, though the rapid swishing of its tail betrayed its excitement. We just had a connection. Sure. Christopher agreed with a knowing smile. Now, about logistics. My ship is barely big enough for me, much less a 10-ton furball. We'll need something larger. The Protector nodded eagerly. The Kririor have several cargo vessels that could be modified. We could steal it. Perfect! We'll requisition one, claim it's for some sacred mission or other. These folks seem pretty eager to do whatever you ask. Irizar, who had been watching this exchange in stunned silence, finally found his voice. You can't be serious, he stammered. The Protector cannot leave Kririor. It is unthinkable. Both the human and the beast turned to him, as if only just remembering his presence. Unthinkable? Christopher repeated. Why's that? Irizar struggled to articulate the magnitude of what they were suggesting. The Protector is the foundation of our civilization, our spiritual guide, our military deterrent, your obese pet god. Christopher finished bluntly. Yeah, we covered that already. But our people need you. Irizar pleaded, addressing the Protector directly. What will happen to Kririor without your guidance and protection? The Protector shifted uncomfortably. You have survived as a species for millions of years. You have technology, weapons, a structured society.
My presence has been incidental to your development." "Incidental?" Irizar's voice rose in pitch. "Didn't you choose us?" Christopher snorted. "Choose? He once tried to eat a volcanic rock because he thought it was a particularly shiny fruit. Nearly burned all his insides." The protector growled softly. "That was one time, and I was very young." "My point," Christopher continued, "is that your society needs to stand on its own, not depend on my oversized friend here to solve all your problems." Irizar dropped to his knees, a gesture of supplication he had never imagined performing to anyone but the Empress or the Protector itself. "Please," he begged, "at least consider what this will mean for us. Our enemies will descend upon Krier the moment they learn you are gone. Chaos will engulf our world." For a moment, doubt clouded the Protector's glowing eyes. "Maybe he has a point, Christopher. These people have fed me, housed me, treated me with reverence for centuries. Do I not owe them something in return?" Christopher stepped forward, his small frame somehow commanding despite its size. "Let me ask you something," he said, addressing Irizar directly. "Do you know his name?" Irizar blinked in confusion. "His name?" "Yes, his name. Not this title, Protector is what you call him, but his actual name, the one we gave him." I... Irizar stammered. "Exactly," Christopher said firmly. "In all these centuries, none of you ever bothered to ask his name. These people aren't your friends," he said, turning back to the Protector. "You don't owe them anything." The massive creature slowly nodded, resolve returning to its features. "You are right. As always, brother, you see clearly what I have missed." "So it's decided then," Christopher said, clapping his hands together. "We leave tonight. We can take the back exit. I assume the cave has one. Most predator dens do." "There is a tunnel that leads through the far side of the mountain," the Protector confirmed. "It emerges in a valley several miles from any Krier settlement." "Perfect! We can rendezvous with my crew there, figure out our next steps." Irizar watched helplessly as his entire worldview collapsed around him. "This cannot be happening," he muttered. The odd pair began moving toward the darker recesses of the cavern, already deep in planning their departure. As they reached the edge of the illuminated area, Irizar found himself calling out in desperation, "Wait! Please! At least tell me your name!" The Protector paused, half turning its massive head. Before it could respond, Christopher called back cheerfully, "He's called Fluffy!" And with that, they vanished into the darkness, leaving behind only the echoes of the human's laughter and the swishing sound of the great beast's tail. Irizar remained kneeling in the empty cavern for a long time, mind racing as he tried to imagine how he would explain to the Empress that her divine protector, the cornerstone of their civilization, the being that had guided them for 1,000 years, had abandoned them to reunite with his draconic ex-girlfriend at the urging of a tiny human named Christopher. And worse still, that the sacred, terrible, ancient guardian of Krier was apparently named Fluffy.